Good evening, everybody. How are we doing? If I can get the panel here, we're just about ready to start. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This is our last hurdle with this grant. We did apply for a second grant. Hopefully, we'll get some favorable news within the next couple of weeks, so we can continue on this quest. But before I start, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jeffrey Barone. I'm the Executive Director here at the Cranston Senior Center. I want to start by, first of all, thanking my staff, Maria Rondo, Rosemarie Corin, Doreen Montequillo, Jennifer Kevorkian, David Caroa is the Assistant Director. They all put their heart and soul into this, and I have to say, we did a great job. Our goal was to educate the people, make Cranston a dementia-friendly community, and it looks like we're on our way to do it. So we're here tonight to help you people. We have a great panel of very experienced people in this field. So if you have questions, these are the people that you want to ask. They are the experts. Our moderator tonight is Catherine Taylor. Catherine is the Senior Advisor for Policy, Partnership, and Community Engagement with the George and Ann Ryan Institute for Neuroscience. I have to read this because I can never say that.
I can't even say it. It's really okay.
The George and Ann Ryan Institute for Neuroscience, the Rhode Island Geriatric Education Center from the University of Rhode Island. Our panelist tonight is Ann Cerullo. She's Senior Clinical Research Coordinator, Rhode Island Mood and Memory Research Institute. Terry Fogarty, Community Outreach Coordinator for the Alzheimer's Disease and Memory Disorder Center at Rhode Island Hospital. And Tara Tang, Outreach Coordinator, Memory and Aging Program at Butler Hospital. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much. After the presentation, we're going to have a little question and answer. So if you have questions, you can direct them right to the panel. We have some tables set up there, so right after the program, please go visit the table, see what type of information you can get. And the best part of this, we have some refreshments in the back. Cookies, and we have cider and water. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Catherine Taylor. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Oh my goodness, it's so great to be here at Cranston Senior Center with this wonderful team and the exciting, exciting work that's been done all this year in making Cranston a dementia-friendly community. I'm going to try putting this here.
They go by another cordless mic rant off.
Can you hear me now? Does that work? Okay, great. So Jeffrey told you who I am, and I want to go back a little bit in time because there's such a contrast between when I first got into this work and today. Today is a really exciting moment in time for Alzheimer's research, and the operative word we all agreed on as we were preparing for this is hope. But when I first started working on Alzheimer's, I was Director of Elderly Affairs several years ago, and we were working on the first state plan on Alzheimer's, and the second state plan that was done by current Lieutenant Governor Craig Dwyer's here. I want to acknowledge him. Thanks so much for coming. When we did it the first time, there was no cure in sight. And so what we were really focusing on is how are we going to help people living with the disease and their families until there was a cure. When the second state plan was released just a few months ago, just earlier this year, I told Lieutenant Governor McKee he's in such a much better position because now actually there is hope. And not only are new drugs maybe right around the corner, which you'll hear about tonight, but there are also things we know we can take charge of in our own lifestyle that are really hopeful. So just setting the stage for the discussion tonight, I'm going to turn it over to each of my wonderful colleagues here up on the stage to talk a little bit about what they do at their center, and then we'll start to talk about topics. And feel free, to raise your hand if something strikes you, and also don't be polite if you're getting hungry or thirsty. Do get up and go get some cookies and juice if you get hungry. It's pretty informal. Let's keep it that way. So I'm going to turn it over to Tara.
Hello, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Or is it? Okay. My name is Tara Tang, and I am an outreach coordinator at Butler's Memory and Aging Program, which is headed up by Dr. Stephen Salloway. My primary role is to get out into communities like yours and elsewhere throughout the state of Rhode Island, as well as southeastern Massachusetts, to share about the different work that we're doing, educate people on Alzheimer's, what it is and what it isn't, and then kind of be, hopefully, a friendly face to talk about, what clinical research is as well, and kind of debunk some of those myths. And then also engaging all the different communities to make sure that they are well represented, within the healthcare and the research worlds, and make sure that they feel comfortable and have all the information that they need as well. So I'm one of 3 ladies in the outreach department, so we're very excited to be at events like this tonight. Thank you. Terry?
Thank you, Tara. So my name is Terry Fogarty, and I am with the Alzheimer's Disease and Memory Disorder Center at Rhode Island Hospital, headed up by Dr. Brian Ott. And it's my pleasure to be here tonight. I want to thank the Cranston Senior Center for hosting what I call a historic event, because this is the first time all 3 research sites here in the state of Rhode Island have come together to spread a message about hope. I am joined by amazing colleagues who are out there working with our site. We are working nationally and internationally to really deliver a message about the importance of participating in clinical research to end this disease. So at our site, we are focused on prevention of Alzheimer's disease, meaning finding ways to stop this disease before it takes hold. We are looking at treatment for those who are currently living with Alzheimer's disease. And I always like to take a moment here to mention that the last time a drug for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease was approved by the FDA was 2003. Look at your cell phone that you have now. It looks nothing like the cell phones we had in 2003. So we need that same energy, technology, and participation in research to drive this disease into the ground. So it is really important that we focus on that. And then we are also, of course, looking for a cure at Rhode Island Hospital. And we do that by working together. And that is why it is an absolute pleasure now to introduce our other colleague here on the stage, Annie Carullo. Annie?
So, I'm the one that doesn't have it on, right? Oh, no, it is on. Can you hear me? No, I don't have it on. I told you I wasn't going to need it.
I'll switch with you. See,
All right.
cooperation.
So this will actually flow very well into what I do at Rhode Island Mood and Memory. I am the clinical nurse specialist there. I run the clinical trials. We do a lot of the psychometric evaluations to determine if whatever study drug we're using is working. But they do not allow me in the lab because I am terrible when it comes to mechanical devices. So I'm not allowed to spin blood. I walk by the photocopy machine and it breaks. So we all find our purpose in life, and mine is to actually do the evaluations to determine if somebody meets criteria to be in a study, and then if they do meet criteria to be in a study, to do what we can to find the right study for them, and then to proceed with the procedures of that study. So that's what we do there. Rhode Island Mood and Memory is a small entity, has a staff of 7. We're in East Providence. The only negative thing is you got to drive over the bridge to get to us. We are headed by Dr. John Stukides. He is the Director of Geriatric Medicine at Roger Williams Hospital. He is our primary investigator. We try very hard to make people very comfortable from the minute they walk in the door. Our job is to make them at ease because this is such a difficult disease to contend with. So we try and make your experience one that of compassion, but also of understanding, and we do our best to make you smile as we go through this process. And it's a privilege to work with this population and to be a part of this team today. It really is a rare event. We're usually competing us three, and
Not
today we're
competing. No.
today
Sibling rivalry.
it is a
That's what we're
sibling
calling
rivalry,
it.
but it's a wonderful thing to get together, and we see each other all the time at the various events where we go to try and find people who would be willing to join studies and to be a part of the panel, and to just all together make a plea for you to consider joining a study if that's something that would make you feel like you were doing something to help stop the progression of this disease in generations to come, then that's what we're all here to help you do.
That's wonderful, Amy. Let's follow up on that. Let's talk about sort of a three-part question. What sort of person should consider being in a study? How do they get in touch with each of you? And then what happens next? Want to start with that, Tara?
Sure. I'm sorry, the first question one more time?
What kind of person would want to consider being in a study?
This is really such a personal question, and you want to make sure that a person who joins needs to be fully informed, right? That's making sure that you have done your research and that you feel that you've answered gotten all your questions out, and then that they were answered properly and to a degree that you feel you've been heard, and that you have everything answered thoroughly to your liking so that you can make that informed decision. Another person would be if you want to do something for yourself in the immediate, or something for someone in the future, whether it's a loved one, a family, your immediate children, your grandchildren, for the field itself. This is an extremely altruistic ask that we're, something that you can do. And so when people call in, one of the things that we ask them is, one, aside from where did you hear about us, but why do you want to do this? And that's really important that you, can share that with us, because I think that as researchers, that's going to help us kind of set the tone and bring you through this process, which can, some of these studies are long. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable throughout the entire process, and as we get to know you and why you're doing this, that can help us make you feel more comfortable in the process as well.
Can I follow up on that? So if I'm a person who has a little bit of memory loss but don't have a diagnosis, should I call? Should I call when I get a diagnosis? Should I call if I have a family history of Alzheimer's disease? What would make me think that a study would be right for me?
For us, for our site in particular, it's anyone. I mean, right now we're in the age of prevention of the disease.
Yep.
There's research out there that's showing that some of these amyloid plaques that have been known to put you at a higher risk start forming 15 to 20 years before you even exhibit memory symptoms. So right now we're looking for everyone, sooner the better. Just like with other diseases that we manage right now, the sooner you take care of things, the sooner you have the knowledge about it, the better that you can be prepared in the long run to go forward. And so it's for anyone. This is really for anyone, and that's across the board.
That's really important to know.
Absolutely, but as we say that, we also have to be aware that there are eligibility criteria for participation in any type of study that we have. So most of our studies are for people in the age range of 50 to 90 years old. I think we could all say that for our sites.
Sure.
The prevention studies in particular, if you have a family history of Alzheimer's disease, you're definitely a priority. We would like to see you and talk to you about participation in our studies. It is so important that as Tara so eloquently said, that everyone has to be informed throughout this process. So I think we'll talk a little bit more about what it's like to make that phone call and what the process is that follows that.
Yes. Annie, do you want to talk about what kind of person or should call your?
Well, we're all doing the same studies. Right now, we're looking for people with who have either been diagnosed or have a strong family history and think that they may be starting to have symptoms. I just had a woman call me today. Entire side of her mother's family had Alzheimer's disease. And she's like, I don't know if I'm starting to have symptoms or not. And so we're just going to invite her in. We do I think we all do a brief memory screen when you first talk to us over the phone. Again, we try and put you at ease. We ask you some basic medical questions and, how long you've had symptoms, if you've had them, or what your concerns are. And we there are certain things that for the studies, not all of the studies, but many of the studies won't allow certain things like pacemakers or defibrillators or a seizure history or different studies you can't be on certain meds. So we might talk to you about that over the phone just to kind of, so we can get an idea of what's the best route for you to take in terms of a study. I may find that you don't meet a criteria for any of our studies talking to you over the phone, and I'll call Tara and say, I think I got a patient for one of your observational studies. So, and this is the collaboration that's going on now that, it's the Italian thing, I know. I'm gonna end up knocking her out. But this is what's new about what's happening right now in Rhode Island. We're actually calling each other and say, hey, I might have a patient for you. And that's just a fabulous thing. And then once we do that, then we'll invite you in for a memory screen. And most of us, again, do the same procedure where we pre-screen you. And at that point, we may take a more in-depth medical history. We'll ask you about your history. If you are calling with a complaint of cognitive issues and you haven't been diagnosed, that's fine, because we can do that in the process of the evaluation in terms of a diagnosis if you have one. Or if you end up having one after you go through the evaluation. And at that point, what we're really doing is doing a more in-depth medical history. We'll determine what medications you're taking, how long you've been taking them, and then we do some memory tests with you right then and there that are standardized memory tests that tell us whether or not you're in the ballpark of meeting criteria, and if you're in the ballpark of showing a decline or a change that would warrant further evaluation. And at that point, at Rhode Island Mood and Memory, you meet with Dr. Stukides, and then we'll talk to you about what study options. You see, the whole thing is what we'd like you to do is to look at a study as a treatment option, as an alternative to just going on the standard of care that we all did those studies for, the Aricept, the Exelon. We all did those studies. That's why they're FDA approved. Right here in Little Rhode Island, we did that. However, some of the studies that we're doing, you have to be on a standard dose of that medicine for a period of time before you're allowed to go on to the study. And it may be that you haven't even been on Aricept yet, and we're seeing that you have symptoms, and we may say, well, go on the Aricept for 3 months, and then we'll call you back in and start you on study drug if that's something that will work for you. So there's a lot of things that can happen just at that first appointment. I think we all do this. I think we all proceed the same way. It's the process is pretty similar. It's where it's being done that's a little different.
It may sound overwhelming, but we hold your hand through the entire thing and make sure that you're comfortable every step of the way. Mm-hmm. I know it sounds like a lot, but it is very prescribed. That's why we all do it very similarly, because it's prescribed to be done that way.
Yeah.
And I think we all at all of our sites have wonderful nursing staff, coordinators and everything like that. And that's their job, is to make you feel comfortable, to make you feel informed and part of the process, a partner, if you will, in this process. So I think I know working with these ladies and seeing some of the people that they work with, that I feel confident in saying that, we all have wonderful staff that are very much aware of this and want to make this a hold your hand in a good way process.
It's not like going to a regular doctor's appointment for any of us. It's not that atmosphere at any of our facilities. It's a very warm, you come in, probably the first thing we all do is ask you if you want a cup of coffee. At least that's what we do it, And usually there's a treat in the back too. And then we go from there, and we just take it a step at a time. I'll often have a family member call me and say, I don't know, I know something's going on with my mother, but I don't know if I can get her in there. And I say, tell her you're going to come visit your friend Annie. We're going to have a cup of coffee. She knows a lot about memory trouble, and we're just going to talk. Something simple like that. It's not... at least at Mood and Memory, we don't have the hospital atmosphere, so it's easy to kind of pull that off with us. I mean, that's one of the benefits of driving over the bridge is it is door-to-door service as far as the distinction between us. But as far as the actual job we all do, it's the same, and our goal is all the same, and that's to cure this disease once and for all.
I think we would all say, all of us that work in this, that many of our clinical trials participants become extended family for us and we for them. We're with them through such a difficult time in their lives and for extended periods in some cases. And so we enjoy visiting with them. They enjoy visiting with us. We have oftentimes, and I don't doubt that you have it too, where some of our clinical trials participants bring in food for us,
Oh, yeah.
or
Yes.
or small gifts for their research nurses, just because we just appreciate what they're doing for us, and they appreciate how we are able to help them.
Right. And if I may just add to that, a lot of people who do participate in these trials, they are on the same schedule, so they come in at the same time. So then now they have a little group that they are able to talk with and share their experience with, and they become another part of an extended family. They're sharing pictures about grandchildren, where they're going for their next trip and everything like that, and they come to welcome that as another social outlet, which is wonderful, again, when we're dealing with this type of disease.
Thank you for all that. So, did this go up? Can you hear me now? Yes. So, say somebody has called one of you and highly, highly motivated to participate in a study, and you go through the screening, and none of your studies are quite right for them, and you call your two colleagues and are not able to enroll this person in a study, but they're highly motivated. So what happens next? Maybe Terry, you'd like to answer that.
So in those cases, what we put you on is a future contact list. So as soon as a clinical trial that you may be eligible for opens, you're one of our very first phone calls. I like to try to think of myself, and I'm sure my colleagues do too, as trial navigators. And they use that term in treatment of some other diseases too. But our job is to try to match you with the best trial that will be of most benefit to you. So we don't give up easily. We will, as long as you're continuing to be interested, we're continuing to look for research that will benefit you and that you will be eligible to participate on. So we actually all have a study. Some of us have opened it, and we're about to open it, called Clarity, and we already have a list of people who were not eligible for other studies that we are doing that we will be calling as soon as we open this study to see if we can get them right in and screen them for this study.
And what about the prevention registry? Is that another option?
That is absolutely an option. So if you have memory or thinking concerns, I know my colleagues at Butler also have a registry. We'd love to have you sign up if you have a family history of Alzheimer's disease and have concerns about the possibility of you getting it or some symptoms that are making you start to worry. The Alzheimer's Prevention Registry at Rhode Island Hospital has an initial memory test that they give you, a memory screening, and then annually by phone we do the screening with you so that if we notice any decline in your memory, we can point that out to you and suggest that you talk to your primary care physician or get a referral to a neurologist to be seen. The sooner, we've learned, the sooner that you get treatment for this disease, the better your long-term prospects are as far as managing the disease successfully. The other thing is we can do the ApoE4 testing, and we can talk a little bit more about that later to determine if you're carrying the risk gene for that. What we're trying to find out is we know that having the ApoE4 gene puts you at increased risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. But we also know that some people carry it and never get the disease, and some people don't carry it and do get the disease. So part of our study is trying to figure out exactly what role ApoE4 plays in risk for Alzheimer's disease. We also are starting to take biospecimens, blood and saliva, that we are putting in a biospecimen bank so that as we learn more and more about this disease, we can figure out why I might have a brain full of amyloid plaque and tau protein, which are the hallmarks of this disease. Tara may have none or very little of it. I may not get it, and she may. So let's look at other things that are going on in our body that are making us susceptible to this disease. So we'll talk about that later. This is going to be your problem, Catherine. All of us could talk for hours on this subject.
You're not going to get a word in edgewise until you start to raise your hands. Go ahead, Annie. You want to
I just want to say Rhode Island Root Memory does not have a registry per se the way they do at Butler and at Rhode Island Hospital. But once you come in for an evaluation, if you do not meet criteria for a study that we're doing and we cannot send you to someone else for a study, we just see you every 6 months. Especially if you're borderline and you know you're starting to have memory trouble, but you're not quite at the point where your memory scores would make you eligible to get into a study. There's inclusion/exclusion criteria. I think we'll get into that in a little bit too. But just so you know, we just have you keep coming in every 6 months if that's what you want, and we monitor you. A lot of folks with the family history really appreciate that because they know they're concerned they might start to have memory trouble. They think they're having some memory trouble, but it's not enough to make them eligible yet. So that's what we do, because we don't have a registry for you to sign up at, but we just keep you.
Just to speak about the Butler's Prevention Registry, it's for anyone with or without memory problems, 40 to 85. If you are not eligible for one of our current enrolling trials, we can maybe take a look and see if maybe a clinic evaluation might be appropriate for you, help you find neuropsychological evaluations, which is establishing that benchmark, and for some people that's a wonderful start to their process and learning more about their own brain health. And then we also, if we can contact you in the future as well, and we offer quarterly newsletters and e-newsletters about once a month, just to keep you up to date about what's happening in the field, whether it's in Rhode Island, nationally, internationally. So that way you're always informed. And those are the first group of people that are going to be contacted when something new and exciting is ready to come through.
And there's so much that's new and exciting that you would want to hear about. Just the state of the research is changing all the time. I know that my colleagues at the Ryan Institute for Neuroscience, who are doing basic research in the laboratory and not clinical trials with people, are studying the role of inflammation in the development of Alzheimer's disease and vascular issues. And so that's something I want to just talk about a little bit with the group right now, is the role of our lifestyle in increasing our risk. And let's be clear, I'm not talking about causing Alzheimer's the way we know that smoking causes lung cancer, but just increasing your risk. So let's talk about some of the risk factors, lifestyle risk factors, health risk factors that we're concerned about, that people can think about in their own lives about changing.
Well, certainly one of the things, and I believe it's the Alzheimer's Association is funding a wonderful study right now called the U.S. Pointer Study, and that's looking at lifestyle intervention and taking a look at people who are sedentary and seeing if they have a coaching through exercise and coaching through nutrition, if having that in their toolbox, if you will, if that's going to help improve their cognitive status over a period of time. So I think we're going to hear a lot more about those types of research and what we can do right now, because I think we hear all of this information and you're like, my goodness, what am I going to do about this right now? And I think that's a great tool to have right now. You know, what can we do? What can we do better? You know, we may be sleeping well, we may be getting some yoga in and some relaxation, eating the right kinds of green veggies, just following a Mediterranean-style diet, but what can we do better? And I think, you know, perhaps having in the realm of a clinical research that might assist you in that process. And, you know, it can't hurt in that regard.
So one of the things that we know now is that heart healthy is brain healthy. So a lot of things we've been doing to keep our heart healthy has also been keeping our brain healthy. But if you're like me, you know, I kind of try to lay off too much sugar, and I try to regularly exercise, and I try to get my fish into my diet, but I'm not always good about it. So what exactly do I need to be doing? And that's what our colleague Annie is here from the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association had their international conference this past July, which they always do. The Alzheimer's Association is wonderful for supporting financially and in many other ways the research that goes on not just here in the United States, but throughout the world, globally. And we are learning a lot from other sites in the world about things that we need to do to keep our brain healthy. We just need more of that information, and we need to continue these studies. I was talking to someone earlier tonight about the ApoE4 risk factor, and we're starting to think in research that some lifestyle modifications may help lower your risk even if you're carrying that ApoE4 gene. So maybe I'm carrying that gene, but I'm exercising regularly and exercising to get my heart rate up. And I am eating that Mediterranean diet consistently, and I'm reducing my sugar intake, and I'm getting a good night's sleep. Maybe these things are helping counterbalance the risk that I get from that ApoE4 gene. So this is the kind of research that's going on now. And it is really important, we're finding, and we have to think about this. This is a whole system here. The brain is a big part of it. This heart is the engine that's pumping oxygen-rich blood into our brain. 20 to 25% of that blood is going to feed this brain. So we have to keep this engine healthy to keep this brain healthy, and we have to do everything that we can to maintain heart health and brain health. And I think Annie might be able to talk a little bit about contributing factors such as heart disease and diabetes and Alzheimer's.
I could, but I'd rather do something else first.
Absolutely.
Just to stay on this thread. Challenge yourself. Play an instrument. Learn a new language. If you knew how to speak Italian or you only knew a few words in Italian, and you have a friend that goes to the senior center that can speak Italian fluently, try and have a conversation with them, try and learn. The more you challenge your brain, the more you grease the wheels up there, the better it's going to continue to work for you. So staying socially active. As we get older, we start to isolate. You got to get out. You got to get away from the boob tube, and you got to get out even on cold winter days and go visit somebody. That social interaction is really going to help as much as diet and exercise. We know that. And and it just helps your overall sense of self and your well-being, and you feel more alive. And it's very important. So I actually thought
No, that's
that was
good. She's talking
something
about.
I really wanted to talk about.
She's talking about cognitive reserve, which is a term many of us don't know about. So cognitive reserve, I always use this analogy, right? If you think of your brain as a series of roads. If you're going down the road and you come upon a sinkhole, you don't want to drive into that sinkhole, right? You want to reroute around it. So when we build up cognitive reserve, we're building those roads that help us detour around memory or thinking problems that we have. So doing things that Annie said, like challenging yourself to learn a new language, to learn a musical instrument, those are definitely the things that we want to do. My husband always does the crossword puzzles, and people say, well, I do the crossword puzzle, I do Sudoku, or I do some of those brain games online. I always say that's kind of like, if you've been doing them for a while, you're not really building any new knowledge or building any other roads. You've been down that road before. You've done those crossword puzzles. My goodness, my husband's been doing them since he's 9 years old. He's like 50-some years old now. So he doesn't have many crossword puzzles that challenge his brain. Annie said it, challenge your brain, new learning, new thinking, build those new roadways in your brain.
And not just mental things, art.
Yes.
Get your hands dirty. Work with, I'm a potter, so I'm partial to clay, but work with clay. Work with something that, working on that car engine is as good for you as any diet, so it's just using what you have will certainly help keep you as sharp as possible. It's not necessarily going to stop Alzheimer's from coming, but maybe it'll help delay some of it from progressing. So it's certainly something to keep in your toolkit. I like that toolkit analogy.
And there's a strong argument for doing all these things once you get a diagnosis. It just adds so much to the quality of your life, and possibly will keep the disease from progressing as fast as it might in somebody else. Just all these well-being things. We didn't mention sleep, so I'll throw that in there. But a good night's sleep has been shown to be really important too, that when you're asleep, your brain actually washes out all the garbage, all the plaques and tangles. And so it's an important part of good brain health. Annie, you probably have over on your table just a nice little cheat sheet on heart. Yes, so everyone should go over and pick that up and tack it on your refrigerator, and just remember that all of these things that keep your heart healthy and your, and your mood good, they're just great for your brain health too.
And if I could put a little plug in, next Wednesday, November 7th.
Oh, good, yes.
The Alzheimer's Association is hosting a talk at the, I always want to say the Ramada, it is the Radisson in Warwick, on lifestyle modifications and dementias. It's really going to be an interesting talk, and we invite you all to attend that also. You can see Annie for information. There are flyers at both our tables, so.
That's fantastic. I wanted to ask a bit about challenges in recruiting study participants, and I know there are certain communities you have trouble getting into, why that's important. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So one of the major challenges that you're going to see, that we see not only in Alzheimer's disease, but in other indications as well, such as oncology, is getting more people, the entire community, to be represented in that. And by that, I mean most of the people who participate in clinical trials are the same socioeconomic level, and they tend to be Caucasian. So in order to find a cure for a disease that affects so many people, regardless of where you come from, we need more people to represent the communities that they come from. So we need minority recruitment into trials has historically been very challenging for a variety of reasons, and good reasons at that. But we are now about to turn into a new decade. We are in the 21st century, and so we need to come to the table together, have frank discussions about what those challenges are and how we might be able to surmount them, and then move forward so that we can have more people to participate. Because if we find a breakthrough treatment for this disease and it's only for a certain group of people, then we have not succeeded. Mm-hmm. We need everyone to participate from wherever you come from to be in these trials. And I think there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of lack of education that needs to be addressed first before we can move forward with that. And I think all of our sites here are more than willing to have that discussion with you. And so we can learn. This is a two-way discussion. This is not just us telling you, you need to tell us. And so that's extremely important, and I feel very strongly about that we make sure we have that open dialogue in order to move forward into the future and find something very successful.
So this is a nut we definitely have to crack. We also need to get more men involved in Alzheimer's research, because it's predominantly women that are participating in research. We have to remember that almost 50 million people worldwide are living right now with Alzheimer's disease. So I just want to echo what Tara said. It's imperative that, and I am always blunt about this, we cannot develop a drug that only works for white, middle-class, educated women. We need a drug that works for every single person in this world.
And I'm not sure if you know, but African Americans are 2 times more likely to develop this disease, and the Latinx population is 1.5 times more likely. So it is absolutely imperative that we have participation from all these different communities in order to find that breakthrough treatment.
Why is it important to get as many people as possible into clinical trials?
I always like to remind people that all of us sitting in here, not one of our bodies operates in the same way. We have a lot in common, but we have a lot of differences. And just think, Excedrin PM might work for my migraine, but it won't necessarily work for Annie's migraine. So the more people we can get involved with research, the better we can really look at precision medicine here, so that we can find treatment that will work for everybody. And I'm going to just take a moment here to step back, because more and more, and I think my colleagues will agree with me here, we're starting to think, or we're coming to realize, that treatment for Alzheimer's disease is going to be a lot like treatment for cancer. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to use cocktails, mixes of drugs, and probably other modifications to lifestyle to really treat this disease, and it's going to be very individualized, we think. So it's really important that we get as many people on board as we can so that, again, these medications, these cocktails, these options that are available, I don't want to have to say they've cured my Alzheimer's disease, but they can't cure yours. So.
I just want to say, I think one of the barriers to people thinking about going into a study is a generational stigma associated with the disease. And I think as the new generation of people come along, you know, those in their 40s, they're going to be more open to the idea of joining a study when they hit 60 and 70. But the folks who are now in their 70s and 80s, the stigma associated to having something wrong with them mentally is still very strong. And I think that is one of the barriers, and I think if we can all just get over ourselves, we might be able to find a cure for this and stop thinking in terms of there's something wrong with me as a human being because I have memory trouble. And that to me is one of the most primary barriers to this disease and why it's so hard to get people to come into a study. Because they don't, or they're in denial and they don't think anything's wrong with them. Most people that come to these events are the family members that know that their loved one is starting to have the disease. But those that come and sign up are usually not the ones that are having the memory trouble. It's the ones who are afraid they're going to get the memory trouble. So it's kind of educating and, again, providing an environment where they come in and they feel comfortable is our task to help you cure this illness.
So I just want to remind everybody that this is a disease that we're talking about, and a disease of the brain. Like so many other diseases that we recognize as diseases, addictions are a brain disease, schizophrenia, other mental health things. The reason I think Alzheimer's disease is often, I use the word closeted, is because it's a disease of, and many people think of it as a disease of old age. And we have to stop thinking about that. The youngest person diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease right now is 29 years of age. So this is not strictly an old disease of aging. It is definitely not. And I think we're seeing more cases of early onset Alzheimer's disease. That could be because it wasn't properly diagnosed before, or that could be that there are more occurrences of it now. We have to figure out why that's happening. But we have to shift our thinking. Annie's right. We have to think differently about this disease and understand that if a 29-year-old can get it, then we need to think of it as a lifespan disease. That 29-year-old would have had that disease starting in the brain 15 to 20 years before it showed. So now we're talking about potentially a 9-year-old who's starting to develop this disease.
I do have to say that in my experience, those with the young onset of Alzheimer's, which is what she's referring to, those who get it before the age of 65, are more interested in joining a study than those over the age of 65 who maybe just think it's a part of aging or for, like I said, these other cultural reasons. And those who get it at a younger age are really desperate because they know what's in store for them as the disease progresses. It's almost in a way two different diseases when you look at the rapid onset of a younger person who gets Alzheimer's and the severity of the disease and how rapidly it progresses. So they're really so much more, they get it. They get why research is so important, I think, compared to those who are getting it in their 70s and 75 and 80. Although these medications may very well help them all, if we can get everybody in the studies that could benefit from it.
And I think one of the things about the benefits of participating in perhaps a clinical research is that you are taking perhaps something that is you're fearing, you fear this, and changing it and doing something positive with it. You are doing something. This is also giving you the opportunity to plan ahead in a way that you want to. Someone else is not making those decisions for you. You are actively having a say in how you would like to be cared for, what you would like to be doing, where you would like to be sooner. And you can voice those eloquently and say, this is what I want to do. And some of these things that you need to take care of take time. Especially if we're looking at, say, financial longevity or something like that, you need time to take those, put things in order, get all your ducks in a row. The more time you have for that, the less stressed you're going to be, and then you can feel at ease at how, going into the future, that things are going to be done the way you would like them and not done under duress. So I think that's really important.
And one more thing that I try to reiterate with people is, if you had a diagnosis of cancer and that cancer was terminal and they were not able to find treatment for you, you wouldn't hesitate probably to participate in a clinical trial. Clinical trials, in my thinking, should be part of a care and treatment plan for your disease. Right now, and I never like saying this is a fatal disease. Mm-hmm. No one yet has survived this disease, though the Alzheimer's Association always shares with us the first person to survive that disease has probably been born already and is walking on this earth, which is a really exciting thing to think about. So think about it as part of your comprehensive care for your disease, participation in clinical research. We can talk a little bit more about the benefits that you get as a participant in clinical research, but I will let Catherine help us through this conversation.
Exactly, and I did want to just put my elderly affairs hat on for a minute and make that distinction that dementia and Alzheimer's disease are not normal aging. They're not. And it's important to know that you can grow to a ripe old age and be cognitively completely normal, and that's the way it should be, and that's what we're all working on because we want it to be that way for everyone. Certainly the scientists that I work with at URI believe that cure is around the corner and also agree it's probably Alzheimer's disease as we grow older is probably many different diseases, and we'll attack it many different ways, which is why we need all of your help. But there is just, I hope you hear it in all of our voices and everything we've said. We are so optimistic, which is why we're here, and which is why we want to recruit all of you, if not to be in trials, then to spread the word about why this is really the golden age of research into Alzheimer's. Both in our state, Rhode Island really boasts some of the finest researchers, both our fine doctors here who run their clinics, but also we have incredible institutions doing basic research. We have Brown, we have the VA, we have the Rhode Island Hospital is doing some, we have URI, the Ryan Institute. It's just really exciting.
Rhode Island, small and mighty.
We're very small and mighty. And then on a national and international level, the investment finally, but is unprecedented in its scope. And so it's all hands on deck, and people are dropping tired theories that haven't worked yet and looking at new things and thinking outside the petri dish for the first time in a really long time. So, we want you to leave here with just the sense of optimism that we have. I don't know how long we're going to be here together. I want to make sure we have time for questions. Should we get into that? Do you want to?
Could we maybe
absolutely
talk with Julie and Ed a little bit about their experience?
Absolutely.
I think that might be a good time.
Do you want to take a mic over to them?
Yes. Why don't you introduce
So I'm going to introduce you to some folks. This is Julie and Ed. They're in the one of our trials at Rhode Island New Memory, and they volunteered to come tonight and just kind of talk to you a little bit. I won't go into details about exactly what study they're in. I don't want to give any personal information out, but I just wanted them to come so maybe that they can inspire you on considering being a study candidate. I don't know, Ed should talk first, but
Figure it out.
Ed went through, I got him in to see a neurologist because I was continuing to notice, changes in his memory. And so we went through the 3.5 to 4 hour testing, and then he went to a neurologist. And then Ed being who the kind of person that he is, I came home from work and he had been on the computer all day long, you know, looking for something, for some sort of research, because he knows what this disease entails. And so I'll let him kind of go, like how he found mood memory and then me being his support person. But I will say it's been a very positive experience.
If I remember correctly, I looked at the clinical trials. I think it's clinicaltrials.org.
Gov.
And I think I started out, I was diagnosed 3 years ago, disabled. And I started out with the New Haven Hospital, and Annie would know more about that test, that trial than I would, but it was everything was very easy. It was everybody's very, personable and, so anyway, trying to think so anyway, I've been in clinical trial for 3 years. And it's been a good experience. I don't dread going or anything like that. I live in Stoughton, which is about 17 miles south of Boston. It's easier for me to go down to, where you are.
In East Providence.
Yeah,
He doesn't mind coming over the bridge. Just say.
There are no bridges in that direction.
And the last memory test I took, I did as good, I think, as the one I had 3 years earlier.
You're holding.
Yeah.
I will say in the beginning, when I first had to go in and, meet with Annie and Lynn and everybody, I was so nervous, like, what am I going to say? But I just have to be honest. And so in the first, all the questions and stuff like that, you finally just get used to them and, just try to answer them the best you can. But Ed didn't get in. He didn't qualify for a couple of the studies, just because he is very well-versed and very smart, and he knew all these things. And I'm like, come on, But anyway, he definitely, clearly does have a diagnosis as early onset dementia. And us being older parents, but we still do have 2 children in college. So it has been a challenge with our family, and but we have all the support of them and the support of Moving Memory. I mean, they are wonderful people, and they know what Ed likes when he goes down for his infusions. They get his little cookies and his smoothies. And
We do
whatever.
pamper him. We do.
Okay, go ahead, go shopping. So they kind of want a piece of him, I think.
We send you to Kohl's. We're like, go shopping at Kohl's. Go take off for a couple hours. So, yeah.
But what he's in right now it is very exciting, and the news that came with Ed, you're really holding your own. They don't see him worsening. I don't know how much better, but he's kind of holding his own. And then we went to his neurologist like 2 days later after our last visit. And, his doctor also said the same thing. So we are very hopeful. And then that drug came out. And I was like very excited. But we've done some things kind of on our bucket list, just in case the left foot drops and things change very dramatically. But we're just kind of living life each day. And we hope that we continue to, just stay steady as we are. But I would definitely go down there, and they'll always have a study that you can, we went through many before he finally qualified, and
Well, that's an example of we didn't let him go. We just kind of hung on to him. Because he was borderline. We didn't have a study he actually met criteria for a while, and then, so we had to wait until, and that's unfortunate, but hopefully with the new studies coming on that are allowing people who are just starting to have symptoms, but don't have to have a certain memory score or, score a certain way on a certain test, and that's part of the inclusion and exclusion criteria of getting into studies. It isn't as easy as it sounds to actually meet all of the criteria, and in his case, we kind of had to just hold on to him. So we just, every 3 months, every 6 months, we'd have him come in and see how he was doing, and then as soon as the study came that he was eligible for, it went like clockwork.
it's been great. We're coming up almost on that year of being in this study, where he has to have the PET scans and the MRIs and blood work and all that kind of stuff, but we just kind of go with the flow. I haven't taken any time off from work. I kind of just work it around my schedule. If things progress, I may have to think of that differently. But it's worked out, and they're very adaptable for the most part of scheduling. Like, Julie, what's your schedule? What days are you off? So that's been a very positive thing, too, that we really all work together. Do you have anything else to say about this?
I think Julie recognized that I leave my wallet somewhere, or my glasses, or my keys.
It still does.
I still misplace them, but I try to keep them on me, more. But the other thing was, I noticed when I was putting using the Core-Aid and putting what is it? K-cup. And then I go to the refrigerator to get the cream, and I forget whether I put the K-cup in. So I knew there was something wrong. So then because I know a lot of people don't, what do you call it?
Well, they don't want to accept or think,
Accept.
is this really happening to me?
Yeah. I forget the word.
And that happens too, difficulty with word finding, and not all the time. But sometimes you just give them their time to, to find it, or, so, I don't know. We're in it for the long haul.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story and hopefully inspiring everyone else here, and inspired me. And now I'd love to, unless you ladies have anything else you want to say right now, I'd love to get some questions if there are any.
One quick thing I do want to mention, because I was just thinking about this while you were talking. Once you enter a clinical trial, if you decide that it is not going to work for you,
Absolutely.
for any reason, you don't have to explain yourself to us. You just say, I no longer want to participate in this clinical trial. We might shed a little tear in the corner of our eyes, but we'll wipe it quickly so you don't see us cry. But it is your decision throughout the entire time you are involved in this study, whether you continue forward or not. And there is nothing comes of the fact that you've decided to stop participating. There's no, I'm trying to think
Repercussions?
of... Repercussions, yes. There are no repercussions to you. Nothing changes. We are so appreciative of everybody who even considers participation in clinical research. And we understand that situations may change in your life that make it difficult to continue in a study. And we're just grateful for any of the time that we get with you. So...
And we're so grateful that you all just came out on a drizzly night and to hear what is so important to all of us and our work, and to have us share this with you. And we'd just be really happy for any questions you might have. Yes?
Hi, I have a question. So I hear a lot about Alzheimer's disease. Are you doing any clinical studies for other types of dementia? I know my mother-in-law had Lewy body dementia. There's so many different types of dementia, different medications for different dementias, and different treatments. So are you doing any other studies other than just Alzheimer's?
Right now, at Butler Hospital, that's our primary focus at the moment. as well as more observational trials, but for right now, it's within that realm.
So it's covering variety of dementias, Alzheimer's and related.
Alzheimer's is
dementias.
predominantly Alzheimer's
It's
at
predominantly
this moment in time.
And I think the reason that we're focused so much on Alzheimer's disease is because 2/3 of those living with the dementia in this world are living with Alzheimer's type dementia. But my family, you said Lewy bodies, my family is frontotemporal dementia. And I do believe that once we unlock the mystery to Alzheimer's disease, it will have a cascading effect and also help us understand and treat more effectively all the other dementias, not to mention other brain diseases such as Parkinson's and Huntington's disease. So this is where we're focusing our attention with the thought that this will be informative to all other dementias.
I just want to say, and we also find that sometimes that people are just misdiagnosed. And what's really going on is Alzheimer's, because I've been in this field for 35 years. I have met tens of thousands of people with Alzheimer's, and now 2 of them are alike. So even though there's a typical progression of the disease, it may be that somebody was misdiagnosed, so it's still worth calling and getting an evaluation if you're not really sure. If somebody thinks it might be this, but they're not sure, I mean, it still might be worth making a phone call. We've had people misdiagnosed several times with temporal lobe or a multi-infarct dementia that actually had Alzheimer's.
What if they already have a diagnosis? Can they still come to you for a screening?
You know what, that's a one-on-one thing.
Okay.
That's a telephone call,
Okay.
and then we can figure it out from there. I'm just saying, unless it's really well documented and they've had it, the progression is very clear. Particularly if it's a new diagnosis and you're not 100% sure and you want another opinion, then yeah, a phone call is fine, and then we can go from there. It's happened, it's happened where they've been misdiagnosed.
What is the funding? Do you have to use the Blue Cross?
Can I answer this since I
Please
got it?
do.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
No,
Hear that?
no,
How
no,
are
no,
the
no,
trials
no.
funded?
For all of the research that we do, the drug company that is sponsoring for drug trials, for clinical trials involving a new compound to cure Alzheimer's, the drug company pays us, and then you get a stipend. All of the studies provide a stipend, a travel stipend to you, but for the Eastside BN2401 study, which is one of the studies that we're all doing, I mean, actually for the tau study as well, you're getting a $10,000 workup. By the time you get to that PET scan and the tau PET and all of the other the MRI, all the other evaluations, you're getting this really incredible workup to determine if you have the disease or not. And all of that is paid by the sponsor. It's not paid by you.
Yeah, we don't have any studies, and Butler, I'm sure, is the same, where you have any copay or any payment
No.
whatsoever.
No.
All the studies, because you are participating in the research, there is no cost at all to you.
What is the focus of each of your studies? I hear drug medications, but what are you looking at specifically?
Great time to talk about the science.
You have the mic.
You have the mic. You can start it off.
At Butler, so we have we have drug trial studies, we have observational studies that could involve maybe blood draws, EKGs, cerebral spinal fluid, so the lumbar puncture that you might hear about. We have those kinds of trials, and we're always constantly evaluating to see if there are other trials that we would be able to take on that would be beneficial to the community as well. So it ranges, and that's why I think we were all saying that we want everyone to participate regardless of whether or not you have a diagnosis of any memory impairment, because there's so many different trials that are coming out on a regular basis. And that at any moment we could take on a trial and be like, this would be great for this particular population without. And everyone is different, and especially when these age ranges are going younger, people are still working full time. We want to be able to accommodate that, and so there's different ways to go about that as well. So I think it's focused on a lot, but I mean, right now, we have some prevention trials, we have some studies for mild cognitive impairment or early Alzheimer's disease, and also a series of observational studies as well. And like I said, beginning of next year, we're looking forward to hopefully being able to offer a couple more prevention studies, which I think would be really nice here in Rhode Island.
So one of the studies that I was thinking about while Tara was talking is a study called the ADNI study. It's the Alzheimer's disease and neuroimaging study. It's been going on for about 8 years. It is an observational study. It doesn't require the use of any medication. We're looking at people's brains as they age with this disease, and it is informing all kinds of research that is going on in the world. So those brain images and the biospecimens collected as part of that study, again, are shared worldwide. Both Butler and Rhode Island Hospital are sites for that. We are still enrolling. They've just extended enrollment into 2020 for this. We're especially looking for more minority population people to join us in this study. But this is a historic study that has provided so much information to researchers worldwide to help them pinpoint and target areas of the brain and different types of treatments and lifestyle modifications that benefit the brain. So that's an amazing research study that's going on. And I think we would be remiss not to talk a little bit about aducanumab study. Many of you heard recently that Biogen has revived or resurrected a drug that just earlier this year they determined was not of benefit and so stopped the study. Well, they've reworked the data that they've gotten and are seeing that there are signals that this is beneficial for this disease, and so that is starting back up soon at our sites. And aducanumab is a drug that we think has great potential of being the next FDA-approved drug for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. So that is thrilling and exciting news for all of us in this field.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking too, one more thing that I was going to share. So we talked about taking these biospecimens, blood samples from people. One of the things that has done is hopefully provided us a way to diagnose Alzheimer's disease from a blood sample. We are on the cusp of that, and that will be such a game changer in research, because that 9-year-old who's carrying that disease in their body will be able to see it at that age, and hopefully we'll have treatment that we can start right away to eradicate it before any of the signs or symptoms come. So when we talk about how excited we are about research, we really are excited. This is the golden age. There has never been the breadth and depth. There's never been the collaboration and sharing of information, and we invite you all to consider being what we call affectionately citizen scientists and joining us in this fight to end this disease. Be part of our mission. Be a part of our team. We're working hard every day at all of our sites with all of our staff to find a way to end this.
Terry, you have a question?
You had mentioned earlier about misdiagnosis. It's a two-part question, really. The difference between dementia and Alzheimer's, and how do you diagnose the Alzheimer's?
Right.
Can you repeat the question?
We're going to do Alzheimer's 101 right now. All right, we're going to go, I'm just going to be brief though, because this is a whole hour and a half left.
Question in the back.
Okay.
That's the question.
Yeah, the question is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's, and how do you go about diagnosing the Alzheimer's?
Okay, so briefly, Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. Okay, so there are several types of dementia. Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal. You can get a dementia from vascular dementia from multiple strokes. You can get a dementia from drinking too much. There's I got the one that doesn't work again? All right. Told you it's a mechanical thing with me. My Mercury is in a permanent retrograde. So that's basically that question. But, as we were saying, 75, the stats are
67.
67, 70, 75% of dementias are Alzheimer's. I think the next one is Lewy body is the next, and then vascular dementia is the next in terms of the frequency. Now, the way you differentiate, back in the day before we were able to do PET scans. We used to just do it as a clinical diagnosis, and it was actually a diagnosis of ruling out if anything else was going on. So we know that in Alzheimer's disease, it's a slow, steady, global decline. If somebody had vascular dementia, we would know that it's a stepwise decline. Most people with a vascular dementia, if I asked their loved one, when did you notice something was happening, they'd say Christmas Eve, they fell down the stairs. Ever since then, they're just not the same. If I asked somebody who had Alzheimer's disease, when did you first notice somebody was starting to have trouble, they'd say, I don't know, maybe in the last 6 months, last year. They can't tell me that exact moment. So that's just an example. But we know certain things are going to happen. You're going to start to have short-term memory loss. You're going to have issues with orientation. You're going to have issues with judgment. Which comes first? It varies on the individual. Like I said, everybody's a little different. Short-term memory, though, decline is that hallmark symptom. We all expect to see that, and then from there. And then we would give them MRIs and do blood work to rule out if they had strokes or if their B12 was off or their thyroid level was off. And, we just make sure that there's nothing medically going on with them. And then when you get the MRI also would tell us if they have something else going on, like normal pressure hydrocephalus or a multitude of small strokes that could be causing memory trouble. But now we have the PET scan. And this amyloid PET actually measures the amount of amyloid in your brain. And we're able to determine, and that's what happens with some of our study folks. They'll come in and they look like they're declining. They look like they have the disease, but they're not having that amyloid, the positive amyloid in their brain. We can also now determine from cerebrospinal fluid if somebody has too much amyloid in their brain. Because their cerebrospinal fluid levels are too low in amyloid, that means it's hanging around in their brain, which is where we don't want it. And just to go back to your question about the different drug trials we're doing, right now we're all doing a drug trial that attacks the amyloid, and that's the BAN 401, 301 trial. It's I just want to get this in because we didn't really talk about this yet. It's basically a vaccine against the amyloid in your brain, and it's removing the amyloid. I can't talk with one hand. The Italians are having problems here. So that's one study. It's an infusion study, and you come in once every 2 weeks, and it removes the amyloid from your brain. It goes into open label after 18 months, and that means that even though it's a 50-50 shot, you're going to get the study drug for the first 18 months, you'll definitely get it after those 18 months. The other drug study we're all doing, I think you're doing the tau too. Are you doing the TM tau? No. The laureate?
No,
Okay.
we're not there.
You're doing it. So for the BAN 401, we're looking for people with mild cognitive impairment, and we're looking for people with mild AD. And again, don't worry about what that means. We can figure it out when you come to visit us. But if you were newly diagnosed, that's the study for you. The mTau study that we're doing is going after the tau in the brain. You all know about the amyloid plaques and the tau tangles, right? So, like we were saying, we all think that we're going to cure this disease by a combination of treatments. So we're also looking at the tau. The tau protein is destroying brain cells. And once it takes off, it doesn't stop. So what we're trying to do is stop that tau from destroying brain cells. So the other study we're doing now, in this study, which is rare, we're looking for people with moderate Alzheimer's who have had the diagnosis 3 to 5 years, and who are on their way, on their journey, right in the middle of it. Which is an awesome thing because most studies are only focused towards people who are just being diagnosed. So that's what's going on right now in Rhode Island. And these are international studies. So it's pretty cool that the three of us are all representing institutions that are doing them right here in Little Rhodey.
So we have time for a couple more questions back here.
I want to go back to the ADNI study. At one point, the ADNI study was recruiting cognitively normal people. So people that have absolutely no sign of disease that want to help to find a cure. Are they still recruiting the cognitively normal?
So that's a great question. She's asking if the ADNI study that is currently going on is still recruiting cognitively normal people. At the beginning of this study, that they were taking anybody who was cognitively normal, those people with mild cognitive impairment, and those people with mild AD. Recently, they're getting ready to close the study. They were thinking they were going to do that this year, but they pushed off to next year. So right now, they are only recruiting for individuals in the minority population who are cognitively normal, meaning not having any memory or thinking problems right now. They are still recruiting individuals over the age of 55 who have mild cognitive impairment or mild Alzheimer's disease. But again, that just speaks to the need for more minority participation in this clinical research. Here's a study that's been going on for 8 years, and they have plenty of Caucasian individuals who are not experiencing memory and thinking problems, and nowhere near enough minorities who are having cognitively normal brain function right now. So it speaks again to the fact that this research can't be just done for a certain segment of this population. It has to be done for everyone.
What do we know about any particular study specifically for caregivers?
I couldn't hear that, Annie. I'm sorry, honey.
Annie, I think maybe you can answer that question. I might bring you a microphone that works.
You actually
So
heard it?
Annie is our lifeline with the Alzheimer's Association. And the Alzheimer's Association is a wonderful support for those who are living with this disease and their caregivers. And I know she can speak eloquently about this.
So I know in the past that here in Rhode Island we have supported types of studies specifically for caregivers. And I was just wondering, about some of the ones that used to be at Rhode Island Hospital. But I do know that there's some studies that are being presented at the Marion Hospital. And I believe, and that's why I wanted to ask Terry if Dr. Tremont is still doing his care support study.
You're putting me on the spot, and I can't honestly answer that. But if you'd like the answer to that question, you can call me tomorrow.
She'll get it.
I will have that answer for you. I don't want to misspeak. I know we've done a number of those studies, but I haven't actually had an update recently on that.
One thing I just want to acknowledge is that if we can, family members and caregivers can find out about different types of trials that may support them to understand about caregiver stress, prevention, and there's studies throughout New England about understanding different kinds of supports that are available. Would a study be on telephone support? How is that more beneficial for getting supportive services one-on-one or in a group setting? You can actually go to the NIH website to learn about these type of alternative studies, which can give you a lot of information on that. And so I just wanted to see what you guys were aware of, and I didn't really want to be put on the spot on it, but we could definitely, if people are interested in that, we could find out more about these types of studies. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Annie. And I think now it is time for us to, we have time for one more?
We have time for one more question.
I think we have one right here. Yes.
You've spoken about family history. From what I know from my friends, from my family, we really didn't know what the illness was. They would say, oh, you got 4 out of 7 behavioral markers, and so let's call it Alzheimer's, or, everybody gets this sort of thing when they get to that age, or something like that. And really, unless there was an autopsy done, which very seldom was, nobody really knows from most of the people who are my elders anyway, my friends' elders, whether or not they actually had Alzheimer's. How do we tell?
So the question was about how do you know whether you have a family history? And we talk about this a lot because, my family, we have a dementia, but I had family members that died of tuberculosis at a young age, died in house fires. So we don't know when this started in the family or who carried it down the line. So I always say, if you suspect you're having a memory or thinking problem, even if you don't know what your family history is, we can do memory tests to help determine whether you are actually experiencing what we call something more, or just having a senior moment. And that's something we need to really understand better. Like, when are we having a senior moment, and when is this something to worry about? And I actually have a handout at my table that can help you ask some questions. Annie's probably got some information, and as well as my other colleagues. But when in doubt, I always say, follow up, follow through. One of the things we really have to start doing is admitting we're having a problem, and then the next thing to do is to talk to your primary care physician or whoever your medical professional is. I can't tell you, and I'm sure my colleagues share the same situation, where someone will call up and say, I'd like to join one of your clinical research studies, and I say, do you have a diagnosis? And they say, no, I don't have a diagnosis. I said, have you spoken to a doctor, a medical professional about this? No. So the first thing I do is encourage them to have this conversation with their doctor. And if you say to them, I'm having concerns, I don't know if I have a family history, I mean, now we can go in and look to see if you have the ApoE4 gene, which is the risk gene, and I'm going to stress that, a risk gene. It does not mean you will get Alzheimer's disease. You are just at a potentially greater risk than someone who does not have that. And we can test for that now. So this is all this advancing of science that's happening. We can see in your brain the disease now. We can see in your cerebral spinal fluid the disease now. Soon we're going to see in your blood the disease now. So we'll have better ways of telling you that you have risk or that you have this disease.
Just to add on to that, making sure, one of the things that we as a whole global community can do is to demand of our doctors that they also give us a regular checkup from the neck up, just as much as we would expect everything from the neck down every year. And making sure that that is part of that conversation, putting it on like your little list of things that you need to speak with your doctor about, and to talk about any concerns that you may have. How often is it happening? When do you see it? What do your family members say? Have that conversation and make that part a priority every year, so that you can follow up as necessary, whether it's getting that neuropsychological exam, which is an extremely thorough test, but you're getting a baseline and it's based on you. And it's not based on anyone else, not based on some regular stats that they would normally be done. And then a couple years down the line, you're able to take a look and see if there are any changes, significant changes at that. So I spoke earlier about planning ahead, and that's one of those things that we can do, and we're making sure that everyone demands that right up front now.
All right. Well, time has come. We do have to end. We'll have a little bit of time after if you want to talk to our panelists one-on-one. Ladies, I can't thank you enough. My staff thanks you enough. Maria, what do you think? Great job. We could be here for hours.
I just want to thank you for being in the great dementia-friendly city
Oh,
of Cranston.
yes. All right, so there's some refreshments back there. Please talk to the panelists, visit the tables, and thank you again for coming.